a sealed envelope, a forgotten letter, and a monarch brought to his knees. When a previously unseen letter, written by King Charles in December 1997, suddenly resurfaced in late 2024, it triggered more than royal whispers. It triggered a collapse. The letter's raw grief over Princess Diana's death was staggering. And just days later, during a private event in January 2025, Charles fainted without warning. Was it illness? Or the emotional reckoning he'd avoided for nearly 30 years? The shocking discovery. It began in quiet, December 2024, just weeks before the new year, when royal historians spotted a listing for a 3-page handwritten letter by King Charles, dated December 8, 1997, barely 3 months after Diana's death. The letter, buried for decades, was addressed to a grieving friend, Peter Houghton. But what stunned royal watchers was its tone, unfiltered sorrow. Charles wrote of an unbearable emptiness, a man not hiding behind protocol, but raw, human, broken, in style, the Son. He included scripture, 1 Corinthians 13:12, "Now we see through a glass darkly," a verse steeped in spiritual mourning, suggesting Charles was searching not for comfort, but for clarity. It wasn't just grief for Diana, it was a confrontation with mortality, memory, and consequence. He mourned for his friend's mother, but his grief bled between the lines. Diana's ghost lived in that ink. Highgrove House letterhead, black fountain pen, sealed envelope requesting hand delivery. Every detail was theatrical, deliberate, heartbreakingly personal. The public had never seen this version of Charles. In documentaries and memoirs, he's portrayed as conflicted, bound by duty, emotionally reserved. But this letter, hidden until auctioned in late 2024, spoke of emotional wreckage, a private storm never publicly acknowledged. And with it emerging now, as Charles battles cancer and manages a family under relentless scrutiny, it felt like fate had unearthed more than paper. It had unearthed a wound. Royal commentators, including former press secretary Dickie Arbiter, called the letter the most emotionally honest thing Charles has ever written. For many, this wasn't just history. It was an intimate portal into a grief frozen in time. But what happened next? No one expected. Within weeks of the letter's resurfacing, royal watchers were struck by another twist, not on paper, but in real time. During a private engagement in early 2025, King Charles reportedly collapsed. The timing couldn't be ignored. As the media pieced together the emotional toll of the letter, the line between past pain and present strain became impossible to separate. In the next chapter, we explore the shocking moment that brought the king to his knees, literally. The crash. The collapse happened behind closed doors, early January 2025, during a private dedication ceremony at a chapel near Sandringham Estate. No cameras, no press, only a handful of attendees. According to 2 palace sources, King Charles suddenly faltered during a moment of silence. Aides rushed to steady him. The official word? Fatigue, but insiders whispered something deeper. It wasn't physical. It was emotional. He crumbled when Diana's name was mentioned. At 76 and mid-treatment for cancer, Charles had experienced fatigue before. But those closest to him noted that this time, it wasn't exhaustion alone. It was personal. One source said he had been reading Diana's letter the night before the event. Another described a shift in him in recent weeks. Quiet, reflective, visibly thinner. Was it grief revisited? Guilt unburied? Or simply the final unprocessed wave from August 31st, 1997, crashing after 27 years? Public statements stayed minimal. Clarence House released a short note confirming the king had temporarily paused engagements for recovery, but headlines spiraled. Diana's letter brings king to collapse. Was it memory or illness? Unseen tears of a monarch. Royal watchers drew a direct line from the letter's discovery to the physical moment of collapse. It wasn't conjecture, it was legacy manifesting in the flesh. What should have been a quiet tribute became a full-circle reckoning. Charles's body did what his heart could not. It bent under the weight of unfinished mourning. The king who had carried decades of reputation, judgment, and restraint, suddenly couldn't carry the silence anymore. That single moment, one man collapsing under the weight of memory, struck something ancient in the public psyche. The image of Charles, shaken and supported by those around him, echoed a story we thought we'd buried with Diana. But now, her presence seemed to rise again, not in scandal, but in sorrow. And in the next chapter, we revisit that infamous day, August 31st, 1997, and how this modern collapse mirrors the shattering moment that started it all. Diana's echo in Charles's collapse. To understand Charles's collapse in 2025, we must go back to 1997, when Princess Diana's death shattered not just the monarchy, but Charles himself. Eyewitnesses and former royal staff have described the moment he first saw her lifeless body at Pitié-Salpêtrière Hospital in Paris. He howled like a wounded animal, fell to his knees, and nearly fainted. That pain never fully healed. It became the backdrop to his future reign. Fox News, Time, Yahoo UK. Even though the public focused on Diana's legacy and William and Harry's grief, Charles's suffering was less visible, muted by criticism, complicated by history. But those close to him said he was deeply affected, shattered in silence. The 2024 letter, once private, confirmed what few wanted to believe. Charles did grieve, not as a monarch, but as a man whose past mistakes collided with profound love and loss. Fast forward to January 2025, and it's impossible not to draw a parallel. History repeated, not in scandal, but in emotion. The same man who once collapsed in grief before Diana's casket now faltered again, not because of illness, but because of memory. Her voice, preserved in letters, her presence haunting the periphery of power, reminded us that grief doesn't follow royal protocols. And just like in 1997, it was Prince William who stood nearest to that grief. Then, as a 15-year-old walking behind his mother's coffin, now as a son watching his father physically shaken. The timeline had folded into itself. A collapse in 1997, a letter in 2024, a reckoning in 2025. Diana's echo had returned, and it brought a king to his knee. King William's steady strength. In the moments following King Charles's collapse at the January 2025 private ceremony, the scene shifted focus, not just on the fallen monarch, but on the man who caught him. Prince William, now 42, immediately stepped in. Eyewitnesses described the moment as instinctive. He didn't wait for aids, didn't look to others. He moved directly to his father's side, taking his arm and softly guiding him into a seated position near the chapel's west aisle. His face, calm but tight, reflected decades of practiced composure, one he learned in the fire of loss. William's actions weren't just about duty, they were personal. Behind closed doors, those close to the royal family say William and Charles have grown closer in recent years, particularly after the king's 2024 cancer diagnosis. Their bond, once strained during the Camilla years, has reportedly softened into one of mutual respect. But in this moment, that respect became something else: protection. Diana's eldest son had stepped in to shield the man who once failed her. The irony was not lost on anyone. Observers also noticed how William's gestures mirrored Diana's own public empathy. When Charles looked dazed and tried to recompose himself, William reportedly whispered, "Take a moment. I've got this." Simple words, heavy meaning. At that moment, he wasn't heir to the throne. He was a son, helping a grieving father shoulder the unbearable. And just like Diana once calmed anxious children in hospitals, William now steadied a king cracked open by memory. Royal fans praised him across social media platforms. #Prince William Protects trended within hours. Commentators on BBC, Sky News, and even former critics pointed to the moment as deeply humanizing. William didn't put on a show. He didn't need to. His presence, still, composed, silently loyal, was everything the monarchy needed in that moment. A bridge between brokenness and strength. Diana's grace was in the room, and it wore a blue Windsor suit. While William's steady reaction stole headlines, another storyline stirred just beneath the surface. Diana once lamented that the public never truly saw the full love story she shared with Charles. Now, with this newly surfaced letter revealing the king's raw grief, we're seeing glimpses of a deeper truth. What if, beneath the royal scandal, there was real heartbreak, real love? In the next section, we look at the hidden archive Diana wished the world would one day see, and how this single letter might be only the beginning. A legacy of love letters. It's easy to forget that before the collapse of their marriage, before the scandals, and before the global heartbreak of August 31, 1997, Charles and Diana once exchanged heartfelt letters. Diana herself, in a 1995 recorded conversation with biographer Andrew Morton, expressed sadness that the public only saw the damage, not the depth. She believed one day her sons would come to understand the full story, not just of her pain, but of their father's love, however flawed. The newly surfaced 3-page letter, written by Charles on December 8, 1997, seems to confirm her quiet hope. It wasn't addressed to Diana, but her memory soaked every sentence. Words like emptiness, longing, and the now viral 1 Corinthians quote show a man lost in sorrow. This wasn't the detached prince often painted by tabloids. It was someone emotionally shattered, spiritually searching. And perhaps for the first time, the public is seeing him through Diana's eyes, not as the villain, but as a grieving man. Many now wonder, are there more letters like this one? If Charles kept this note so private, what else lies buried in royal archives or tucked away at Highgrove House? Could there be drafts he never sent? Letters Diana saved? Personal notes exchanged during their early romance in the late 1970s? If one letter can change how we understand a king's collapse, imagine what a box of them could do to the public memory of their relationship. Royal fans are torn. Some say the letter feels like too little, too late. Others see it as a long overdue acknowledgement of Diana's continued presence in the family's emotional core. Either way, the effect is undeniable. Diana's spirit, through memory and manuscript, has returned, not to haunt, but to reveal. And in doing so, she's humanized Charles in a way no public statement ever could. But just as hearts were softening, the past stirred again. This letter didn't only reopen wounds, it reignited suspicions. Old conspiracy theories surrounding Diana's death began to trend again. especially as the public revisited her infamous notes claiming someone planned an accident. The timing, the emotion, the collapse, it was all too coincidental for some. In the next section, we dive into the shadowed corners of Diana's legacy, where faith, fear, and speculation continue to dance around a single chilling question. Was it ever truly an accident? The conspiracy rumors resurface. With the letter's discovery, whispers once buried under years of royal silence erupted across forums, Reddit threads, and even mainstream coverage. The infamous 2003 letter Diana wrote, claiming "my husband is planning an accident in my car," resurfaced within 48 hours of Charles's collapse. Though long dismissed by Operation Paget, the official 2005 inquiry into her death, its haunting prediction felt newly relevant. Some argued, why would Charles collapse now if the letter wasn't more than grief? Social media sleuths were quick to stitch together timelines. December 1997. Charles writes his own grief letter. Early 2025, he collapses just after it's revealed. Is this a conscience unraveling or something else? Others revisited Paul Burrell's claims, Diana's butler, who once said she feared for her life and kept multiple handwritten warnings sealed away. The emotional collapse, in this context, became more than physical. It became symbolic. A reckoning, decades delayed. Still, others urged caution. Former palace aides, speaking anonymously to Sky News, reiterated, "Charles has always grieved privately. His collapse is emotion and age, not conspiracy." The royal family refused comment. No statements, no denials. Just silence. And sometimes, silence fuels speculation more than words ever could. Regardless of motive, the public was now split. Some embraced the humanity in Charles's collapse. Others questioned the narrative. But everyone agreed on one thing. Diana's story was no longer settled history. It was living again. Whether as truth, trauma, or twisted memory, she had returned to the royal front lines. Public reaction. The moment King Charles collapsed, it was as though decades of collective memory unraveled with him. Within hours of the incident leaking in early January 2025, hashtags like #KingCharlesCollapse, #Diana's Letter, and @Monarch. In grief flooded X, formerly Twitter, and TikTok. Thousands shared emotional posts about seeing a man, not a monarch, brought to his knees by grief. It wasn't weakness, one user wrote, it was unfinished mourning. He finally cracked under the weight of Diana. Across major networks, BBC, ITV, Sky News, the tone shifted dramatically. What began as a potential health scare became a much deeper conversation about legacy and emotional suppression within the royal family. Even longtime critics softened. On a special Newsnight panel, royal historian Dr. Lucy Worsley commented, "This is grief staged not in spectacle, but in silence. And that silence has thundered louder than any coronation speech." Opinion columns debated whether the moment had changed how the public views Charles permanently. But the reaction wasn't all sympathetic. Conspiracy whispers reignited a fire in royal forums and fringe podcasts. Popular YouTube channels, some with millions of views, began releasing dramatic titles. Was this a guilty collapse? Diana's spirit breaks the crown? Buried secrets no longer safe? One TikTok with over 3.4 million views spliced the 1997 crash site footage with audio from Charles's unearthed letter, overlaying haunting violin music and calling it the sorrow that finally spilled. Whether sincere or sensational, the world had one reaction: obsession. In an age where truth blurs with narrative, the king's collapse became both an emotional moment and a media mystery. It united grieving hearts and speculative minds, and whether you believed it was about illness, memory, or penance, Diana had once again become the center of the royal story. The very legacy the firm had tried for years to gently quiet had suddenly grown louder than ever before. As millions watched Charles falter and the world rushed to interpret it, attention turned inward, toward the royal family itself. Who stood by him? Who was missing? In the aftermath, every glance, every absence, every subtle act carried weight. Most notably, Queen Camilla was not present when Charles collapsed. Her silence after the event was deafening, and so began whispers not just of sorrow, but of royal fracture. In the next chapter, we unravel how Diana's shadow is straining royal unity all over again. Royal family tensions resurface. The palace remained publicly composed, but behind the gilded curtains, tensions reportedly surged. The collapse may have been physical, but it rippled into emotional realms long left untouched. Prince William was visibly protective. Princess Catherine, though absent from the event due to her own ongoing recovery following surgery in late 2024, was said to be deeply shaken by the resurgence of Diana's legacy in such a vivid form. The family had tried for years to navigate unity, but Diana had re-entered the palace through memory and ink. And yet, the most glaring absence that day was Queen Camilla. Though later reports claimed she had a prior engagement with British Army wives in Wiltshire, her name was missing from the palace's official update. The royal family didn't acknowledge her in relation to Charles's collapse. No statement, no appearance, no photograph of concern. The lack of visual unity sparked immediate questions. "Why wasn't she there?" asked one viral tweet. And more importantly, why isn't she now? Rumors swirled. Did Charles collapse partially from guilt? Was Diana's emotional return rekindling old regrets? Had Camilla stepped back from the spotlight to avoid comparisons? Reports from the Sunday Times suggested Camilla sent a private handwritten note and white lilies to the king the next morning. But for many, the damage, or the distance, was done. Where Diana's memory united mother and son, Camilla's absence reignited divisions. Palace aides tried to temper speculation. One anonymous courtier told the Telegraph, "Her Majesty is deeply concerned, but doesn't wish to make this about her. She's giving the king space." Whether that's true or spin, one thing is clear. Diana's ghost had redefined the dynamics once again. Camilla's decades-long campaign to be accepted now faced its hardest test yet: the unshakable, emotional permanence of a woman who died 27 years ago but never truly left. Amid the drama, it was easy to forget what made this letter so powerful to begin with. Not scandal, but faith. Charles didn't just mourn Diana, he quoted scripture. He grieved through spiritual language. In the next section, we look beyond the emotional collapse and into the spiritual reckoning. What does it mean for a king to fall, not just physically, but existentially? And could that fall be the beginning of something redemptive? Faith, memory, and mourning. Of all the lines in Charles's December 8, 1997 letter, none has sparked as much reflection as the biblical verse he chose. "Now we see through a glass darkly," 1 Corinthians 13:12. A line about seeing incompletely in life, but fully in the afterlife. For Charles, a man raised in monarchy but deeply drawn to spiritual introspection, it was a revelation. This wasn't the polished king with crown and cloak, This was a man unsure of his own vision, haunted by the clarity he may never find in life. Over the years, Charles has expressed interest in multiple faiths, from advocating for interfaith dialogue in the early 2000s to attending Greek Orthodox services in memory of his father. He's never hidden his philosophical side. But this letter wasn't a political gesture. It was personal theology. It revealed a belief that grief carries lessons, that love endures beyond form, and that the pain of Diana's loss was not just emotional, but eternal. Since the collapse, reports say Charles has spent increasing time in solitude, particularly at Birkhall, his beloved retreat in Scotland. Insiders say he's requested fewer briefings, more reflection. Sources also claim he's quietly working with a chaplain familiar with grief counseling, someone reportedly introduced to him by the Archbishop of Canterbury himself. It's no coincidence. The king may be physically recovering, but emotionally, he's re-entering the fog he thought he had long left behind. And in that fog, Diana still waits, not as an accusation, but as an absence that never truly left. The monarchy may project tradition, but the people connect with humanity. And in Charles's silent mourning, they've found something rare. A king humbled not by scandal, but by sorrow. As the dust settles around Charles's fall and Diana's letter continues to spark headlines, a final question remains. What comes next? Will this emotional earthquake lead to further revelations? More letters? A royal tribute to Diana? Or will the palace retreat into silence again? One thing is certain. This collapse didn't end a chapter. It opened one. And in our final section, we face the cliffhanger that has shaken the crown to its core. Final cliffhanger. The world watched Charles fall. Now, it waits to see if he'll rise with clarity, or retreat behind protocol once again. The unearthed letter was a crack in the marble mask of royalty, one that revealed real sorrow, spiritual uncertainty, and maybe even regret. So, will the palace act? Will Charles honor Diana's memory in an official capacity? Will William step forward and embrace his mother's legacy more publicly? Will the royal family issue a joint statement about emotional health, grief, or healing? Whispers from Kensington Palace suggest William may be planning a private tribute event on the 28th anniversary of Diana's death, August 31st, 2025, possibly involving his children, possibly unveiling a never-before-seen photograph. If true, it would represent a turning point, not just mourning the past, but integrating it into the monarchy's future. Meanwhile, Camilla has reportedly cleared 3 weeks of engagements, an unusual pause that only fuels speculation. But perhaps the most significant unknown is the king himself. Will Charles speak? Will he release more letters? Will he finally share the emotional weight he's carried for nearly 3 decades? Or will this collapse, this moment of exposure, become just another page in history? The public wants more than answers. They want connection, closure, and only the crown can provide that. In this rarest of moments, the monarchy has become a mirror for love, grief, failure, and faith. Diana's presence, through ink and memory, has rewritten the script. And though Charles collapsed, he may have finally begun to rise as something deeper than a king. He may have risen as a man. As the dust settles, one thing is clear. This wasn't just a health scare. It was a reckoning decades in the making. King Charles's collapse wasn't about weakness. It was about memory, grief, and the weight of a love story the world never truly understood. The rediscovered letter, written just months after Diana's tragic death, cracked open a layer of humanity the monarchy rarely reveals. And in that vulnerability, the public saw something real. A man mourning, still. With whispers of unreleased letters, a possible August 2025 tribute, and William's quiet strength holding the family together, the future of the monarchy now feels uncertain and deeply emotional. Diana's presence has returned, not in scandal, but in spirit. And as the world waits for the next move, one question lingers louder than ever. Is this collapse the beginning of a healing, or the opening of wounds that never closed?